Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. I'm Chris Baldwin, founder of True Digital Communications, and I'm excited to spend some time with you today talking about one of my favorite topics, challenger brands. The session today is called Building a Challenger Brand from Concept to Execution. We're going to explore how brands that aren't number one in their category can still create incredible impact and sometimes even outperform the market leader. They do this by thinking differently, by taking risks, and connecting in ways that market leaders simply can't or won't. To bring this all to life, we're going to look at some powerful comparisons. We're going to look at 3M versus Duck Brand, reliability versus creativity. We're going to look at Carhartt versus Blocklotter Workwear, the heritage versus the modern edge. We're going to talk about James Hardie building products versus LP SmartSide. James Hardie, the default leader in siding versus the challenger that reframed the category with engineered wood. We're going to talk about Bridgestone versus Goodyear, a global dominating brand versus brand visibility. We're going to do things a little differently in here and talk about Dasani versus Liquid Death, safe and corporate versus irrelevant and tribal. Finally, we're going to talk about Gillette versus Dollar Shave Club, and an absolutely incredible thing here. Which really was incredible innovation versus rule-breaking disruption. So each of these examples shows that a challenger brands win not by outspending the leader, but by outthinking them. They change the conversation, they take risks, and they connect with audiences on a more personal and emotional level. Our goal today is that you'll leave with not only inspiration, but with practical strategies to help your brand stand apart. Because in today's marketplace, being bold isn't optional, it's essential. So grab a coffee, silence your email if you can, and let's dive in. So a little about me. My name is Chris Baldwin. I am the founder of True Digital Communications. I've spent the last 30 years of my career working with both challenger brands and market leaders. I know firsthand how David versus Goliath can really play out. And I'm really excited for the discussion we're going to have today, especially because there's a couple case studies that are programs that I worked on. So joining me in this appreciation for challenger brands are my two amazing team members, Mr. Tony Finisi and Mr. Wayne Selassie. I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Tony.
Hello, I'm Tony Finisi, the content lead at True Digital. I've worked here about 8 years and in agencies for 25 years and worked on both challenger brands and several leader brands. So really being able to see both sides of that, and worked on messaging, strategy, and brand development. And this is one of my favorite topics to discuss.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Wayne Selassie. I'm the digital marketing lead at True. I've been with True for about 4 years now, getting close to 5. I bring over 15 years of experience. I've worked with both agents on the agency side as well as the manufacturer side. Over that time, I've really had the opportunity to work with both market leaders as well as challenger brands and reshaping markets. I'm hoping that I can bring this mix of perspectives to today and really explore what makes a challenger brand strategy so powerful and, to be honest, a competitive advantage.
Are you ready to get started? So before we dive in, here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about really a quick recap about what is a challenger brand. We're going to go from there and we're going to talk about what are the differences, especially in the audience when you're talking about a challenger versus a leader brand. We're going to talk about how challengers find their unique voice instead of just being a copycat. We're going to talk about reasons to believe as a challenger brand, finding them, finding those message points that really make sense. We're going to talk about the strategy, the mindset that's going to move and really set you apart. We're also going to talk about different ways to connect with your audience. So we're actually going to spend a lot of time on that with a lot of these case studies. And we're going to talk about the media strategies and really what's worked and really where you can stand out. Finally, because metrics matter, we're going to talk about measuring success and optimization. So our goal is that by the end of this webinar, you're not only going to be inspired by these examples, but you're also going to leave with clear strategies and tools that can put into action to build your own challenger brand story. So a couple notes about our webinar before we get started. The webinar should be about 60 minutes, maybe a little less. I doubt a little bit more. We're going to try and be mindful of time here. So there will be room for questions at the end. If you have a question, if you could go to the Q&A channel, it's at the very top of the screen there and go ahead and put it in there. That way we'll see it and then we'll address it as we get a little bit later into the webinar. We're also going to have some polls along the way too. So a little audience engagement. We do want to hear from you. So, and there's also a group chat just to enter some additional thoughts here as well. So anyways, let's get started. Take it away, Tony.
Cool. So we'll start. Just a little bit of a recap from our first webinar. What is a challenger brand? It's not always defined by being number 2 or 3 or 4 in the marketplace, but it's really recognized about the advantage that you have versus a leaders. You have the opportunity to operate in a different way, like acting on visionary thinking, being agile, focusing on the type of customers that you want. All of these right here are examples of challenger brands that we've talked about a little bit before, and we'll talk about a little bit more. But these are all not, these aren't number 1 brands, but they do have fiercely loyal followers. They have a lot of brand equity because they've really connected with an audience that's special to just them. Milwaukee is one where they're a challenger brand to Stanley, and Apple, actually a challenger brand to Lenovo. But so these are a little bit some of the examples that we'll start digging into as we move forward. But first, let's start with the question. You'll see this in the poll here pop up in a second. Want to get your perspective. What best describes your brand today? Are you a market leader in your category? Are you emerging challenger trying to grow? Are you a niche specialist with loyal audience, or are you still trying to figure it out? And that's totally fine. And we can address a little bit of the answers here in our discussion here. I'm seeing them coming in. Niche specialist with a loyal audience. That's definitely a great place to be and a great way to grow word of mouth. And then emerging challenger trying to grow. Excellent. So let's take a quick look. What defines a leader and what a leader brand does and versus what a challenger brand does. Leader brands, they're going to create broad connections with large audiences. They're trying to please a lot more people to try to maintain that leadership position. The challenger brands, they're going to make deeper connections with smaller groups. And I think that's one of the things that scares some people is like, it's a smaller group. It's okay. They're going to be more loyal. They're going to spread word of mouth, and that's really going to help your growth. Leaders typically spend large amounts of money on traditional media. They have to. It's a matter of numbers here. They're going to try keeping up by increasing that spend. Where a challenger brand can really have that advantage of focusing on media spends and very targeted, you could say unconventional platforms where a leader might not be, a place where you can connect with your audience, your particular audience. Leader brands are often characterized with slow but consistent growth, and their innovations are slow. They can't shake the cart too much. They can't upset people. They can't change their product too much because it's not what people want. They're used to what they have. Challenger brands, they're different. This is an opportunity where pushing innovations, building new products based off of customer feedback, that's the ride that the customers want to be for a challenger market. They want to grow. They want to have their voice heard. That leader brand, always defending that leadership position. The challenger brand, they can take that calculated risk. If they succeed, it's awesome. If they don't, it's forgiven quickly because they're still gonna innovate and change and try to make their products better, their products and services better. So it aligns with their customers. All right, let's take a little bit closer look at that challenger audience profile, because not all customers are the same, and challenger brand audiences, they are very different. Who they are, they're passionate about their choices. They want to be heard and understood. They look for products that align with their values. They want a voice in their connection with the brands. So they care a lot more than someone who chooses a leader brand product. Who they're not going to follow the path of least resistance. So the good thing is they're open to storytelling. They want to hear what you have to say. They're engaged. This challenger audience is also not going to compromise on quality over convenience. I mean, there's always times where you make the easiest choice if it's in stock, but they'll go out of their way or they'll insist on choosing that challenger brand product because it offers something unique to them that they value that the leader brand just can't get to. So they're not going to choose brands on just popularity alone.
Yeah, great. So now that you know what it means to be a challenger brand, the next question really is, where do you challenge? These are 4 questions that really help reveal cracks in the market. So let's take a look at these. The first one being, what's the customer's biggest challenge? Customers don't buy products, they buy solutions. Take, for example, Warby Parker. They weren't just selling glasses, they solved the frustration of overpriced and confusing eyewear with simplicity. Second, what's your unique value? The goal is to be different in a way that matters. For example, Spotify didn't beat Apple with just offering more music. That was not going to work. They won by offering personalization to their audience. They were able to queue up playlists, allow their audience to discover new music, and the algorithms really made listening feel like it was tailor-made to their audience. Next, I'm sorry, the third question that you would take a look at would be, where is the leader underperforming? Even the biggest players stumble. For example, Netflix saw Blockbuster's late fees and their inconvenient store model really as a weakness. And Netflix was able to build a really robust model around mail-in DVD and then later streaming, what we know about them today. And really knocked Blockbuster completely out of that market altogether. Fourth would be, what is the leader's advantage? And that's important because this shows you where not to fight. For example, when teleconferencing was really taking off, Zoom was able to outpace WebEx, which is owned by Cisco at that time, which was a very big company. But what Zoom did is they used their size against WebEx. They were able to deliver a simple, faster, and more user-friendly product and be more nimble and respond to what the market was looking for at that time. And it was really able to capture that market share and is one of the leaders today as a result. So as we look at these 4 questions, they help you map essentially the battlefield. Don't fight a competitor's strengths, look to attack their weaknesses. You really need to hit them where they are not. That's the essence of a really great challenger strategy.
Okay. So that's when we mentioned trying to find out what makes your brand special. What is your strength and how are you remarkable? That's some of the questions that we have to really dig into to help develop our messaging platform. Is it going to be bold messaging? Is it something that you can say that somebody else can't say? Can you be more upfront about it? Are you communicating on agile platforms that are really connecting with your audiences in a way that leaders just can't reach their audiences? Are you collaborating with customers? Are you working with influencers? Are you taking feedback? Are you including your customers in part of your product cycles? Are you including storytelling? Storytelling that means something to your customers. And then also the biggest part is, are you avoiding the masses? Are you trying to reach everybody? Or are you trying to really hone in on the customers that matter the most to you? One example here is this Purple Cow by Chef Godin asks us, what will help your brand get the attention? One thing to just point out, it doesn't have to be about shock value, but it does have to have meaning to your customer. It's about avoiding mediocrity and finding the right customers where your message will stand out. That's the Purple Cow.
Yeah, and to go along with that, when we start to look at, essentially mass media channels, you don't always need to be in those mass media channels. And ideally, you're not going to be able to outspend your competition. So you need to be really crafty about how you approach your media spend. What matters most really is showing up where your audience actually is. You need to ask yourself, what does your audience go for valuable information? Where do they feel heard? For example, some audiences, they live in Reddit communities. Others look to association newsletters or even niche podcasts. Others do pop-up events that really connect with their audience. The point isn't to reach millions who really are not paying attention to you. It's really to connect the right people in the right places at the right time. That's why challenger brands really lean into channels that might look small on the surface, but deliver a real impact. Things like PR, strategic partnerships, even live experiences, or something like a Spotify sponsorship can be way more effective than just a broad, expensive media buy. The goal isn't visibility, it's really creating meaningful connections. Challenger brands succeed because they focus on depth, not breadth. They show up in spaces that matter most to their audience, and I think we'll show you some examples of that here shortly. But by doing this, they build loyalty, trust, and really credibility in their market. I'll pass it over to Chris to start diving into some of those examples.
So, you ready to get started here? Let's have some fun. We're going to start off with a case study that I know well because Duck Brand was actually one of my clients years ago, and I got to see this firsthand. But before we get into this, let's talk about the leader brand. So, leader brand in this case was 3M and their Scotch brand. If you think 3M, you think global innovation powerhouse. We look at Scotch, it's a safe choice. It has heritage, it has distribution power, it has broad applications. The advantages to being 3M are many. They have a massive R&D budget, and they have credibility across multiple industries. They have shelf dominance and retail loyalty, something that every brand is aspiring for. And probably most importantly, they're known for consistency. They're known for reliability and innovation across categories, not just tape. So if you are the leader, your position or your mindset is really, I need to protect my spot, the top spot. And you're often focused on reinforcing brand trust, standardization, and maintaining market share. They really are, in this case, the 800-pound gorilla in the room. And what's working for them is working for them. However, as Wayne pointed out, there are cracks, there are opportunities, which is why I would like to introduce you to the Duck brand. So hopefully you're smiling here. Duck brand duct tape, positioning behind this is really a fun, consumer-friendly duct tape that turned a commodity actually into a lifestyle brand. The advantages of being this challenger brand, for them, it all came back to media relations, or we, as our client usually referred to it, stunt marketing, something that would get people talking, something that would get people to think of their product in a different way. And I got to tell you, it worked. So much of the Duck brand and really how it was positioned was, bold, emotional marketing, doing things like, as you see here, the Stuck at Prom scholarship contest, where kids in high school made their tuxedos and their gowns and then had a competition behind it. It allowed for endless creativity in product lines. So they were able to separate by colors. They went well beyond gray to also introduce patterns and even seasonal designs. They did a connection with younger audiences in the DIY culture, not just the industrial use. And by doing this, they were able to get publicity. They were able to get PR that was able to demonstrate and help people think about them in a different way. So for them, their mindset was really punch above your weight. Find niches and emotional hooks that 3M isn't built to pursue. And as I say, isn't built to pursue, they did this well beyond duct tape prom. They did this through a duct tape wedding. They did this through duct tape fashion shows. They did it through a duct tape festival here in Avon, Ohio. They did it through creative uses that really spotlighted the user and letting them tell the story, but really showing off their creativity. So this really is the challenger mindset in action. If you're 3M, you're saying, hey, here's a reliable tape. But if you're the Duck brand, the challenger brand, hey, here's the tape that makes you smile. Here's the tape that allows you to express yourself, and you even might win a scholarship. So the Duck reframed the category from functional to creative, a lifestyle accessory. And by the way, they made hundreds of millions of dollars in the process by doing this. So what's the takeaway? Leaders protect what they've built. Challengers take risks. They build emotional connections and they win attention through creativity and resilience. The lesson here, even a commodity category like duct tape, you can differentiate by attitude through creative storytelling and consumer engagement. Wayne.
Yeah, that's a great example. Let's move into another one. Looking at Carhartt. So everybody in the American market typically will know who Carhartt is. They are a leader in U.S. workwear. They built iconic appeal with the products that they have. So they're proven, they're trusted, they are widely distributed, and they all have come with a strong mark of made in the USA as a part of their identity. Over time, though, Carhartt has grown beyond its roots. Really what started as gear for tough jobs is really now common and casual wear. Their jackets and beanies are showing up on city streets. They're in schools, pop culture. It's more of a lifestyle brand now than anything else. That shift really put them into a lifestyle brand, like I mentioned. Still dominant workwear, but increasingly focused on broad mainstream appeal. That evolution really created opportunities for challengers to serve the needs of workers who really wanted something different. So how do you challenge a brand like Carhartt? And that's entering block ladder, which I know Tony talked about just a little bit previously. But essentially, block ladder is from Sweden. They're a workwear manufacturer, and they wanted to enter the U.S. market, but it is obviously dominated by the likes of Carhartt, Dickies, and so forth. True Work in there as well. So instead of chasing mass appeal, they really focused on elite tradespeople. People who saw, their work not as just a job, but really as a part of their identity. For them, workwear really wasn't clothing. It was a tool. It was a symbol of pride. They work with their hands, the reflection of their craft. So Block Ladder highlighted essentially their European quality, durability, design, function, and really positioned the gear as tools for the trade. They made workwear more aspirational for the real pro. Not just rugged and mainstream. Their message was simple. It was disruptive. Workers deserve better than just jeans and an old t-shirt to show up into work. And they didn't just say it. They built a community around it. On social media, Block Ladder celebrated real tradespeople, turning customers into advocates. Campaigns like you see here around wear your grown-up clothes, dress for success. These campaigns really tapped into the pride of working with your hands. So they were able to reframe that market, and not by just copying the leader, they were able to really gain traction. They challenged this category of professional workwear, and they would carry that status, identity, and aspiration, really that connected with their target audience. That's what really made Block Ladder such a powerful challenger in this space. So that being said, let's go ahead and do another poll here along these lines. So now that you've seen a couple examples of challenger brand strategies, what is your biggest barrier to executing a challenger strategy currently? You should see that poll pop up. And it's, what is your biggest barrier to executing a challenger strategy? Let's go ahead and let the answers roll in here. Let's see. So we're seeing rise to the top, limited budget and resources. Around 50%, and hard to measure impact, which is really interesting because we're definitely going to talk about that here towards the end of the presentation. So hold on to that. And that, all of that being said, let's go ahead and I'll hand it over to Tony to talk a little bit more about some other challenger strategies that have happened.
Yeah, definitely the next couple examples here will address some of those issues of limited budget and resources and how to measure the impact. One of my favorite examples is talking in the building products industry is talking about James Hardie and LP SmartSide. James Hardie dominated the siding market in the early 2000s with its modern fiber cement siding. And the focus of James Hardie was largely placed on how it adds value and ROI for the homeowner and how the pros can get behind that because it was an easy sell to the homeowners. It was all the talk of the trade pubs about the value that it can offer. LP SmartSide's coming back in. How a client that I worked on, how are they going to come back as a returning challenger after a very large product failure? What about Certainty Weatherboards? Yes, them as well. LP SmartSide was returning from a terrible product failure from the 90s. Nobody wanted to touch it. It was essentially just off the market completely. It was needed to be reformulated, retested, and come back into the market. But now you're going up against fiber cement products that are just dominating in the early 2000s. So SmartSide had to take that challenger brand mentality. What can they do? And that was to adopt a prove it mentality. We had to show them that LP SmartSide, an engineered wood product, re-engineered, reformulated, had the durability and workability that could win pros over from fiber cement products. So we would show tests, we would show comparisons. We tried to make every case we can to highlight the workability and durability of LP SmartSide. We would show nail tests that you can nail it close to the edge without it cracking, or that one person can carry a board without it breaking, where two people would have to carry fiber cement because the weight of it could crack it, or that an impact from a lawnmower can crack or severely damage or dent fiber cement. We went head to head against fiber cement products by showing durability. That was our way to prove it, and that was the challenger brand mentality. We did it in a very budget conscious way as well. The videos, some of them were very basic. Some of them were just showing how it can take different abuse from different impacts. We would send out kits to influencers and pros in the field, and these kits would have a hammer, some nails, goggles, glasses. Here's a piece of fiber cement. Here's a piece of engineered smart side wood. Do your best at it. And you would get pictures posted, videos posted. The word of mouth just went crazy because people would say, like, yeah, I did the test that you suggested and I did some of my own. And they would give that feedback. And we were creating stories. We were creating something to really build up and rally around. We even did a jousting puncture test video that made it more interesting and kind of a little bit more of a viral feel to show like, oh, like, look, it could take a joust where fiber cement shatters. Some of that lacking from lack of buy-in from the leadership. We went to them and said, hey, we got this idea. We want to build a cannon and we want to shoot stuff at the siding. And they're like, okay, let's do it. We hired a NASA engineer. We built a cannon. It can shoot anything from a baseball size or smaller, car keys, rocks, baseballs, anything, just to simulate real world testing. That cannon went on the trade show circuit for 10 years, showing up at International Builder Show. And every 5 minutes, you hear a huge boom. That's a baseball cracking a piece of fiber cement and bouncing right off a smart side. We had to prove it visually. That was our way as a challenger brand to think smart, use less dollars, and then really create that story of toughness firsthand. That's how LP was able to come back in the market and be a major player and grow their sales exponentially in the first few years and start competing again with the big names of James Hardy and Certainty. Another example, very much close to my heart here, is the Bridgestone and Goodyear. Bridgestone is a leader brand. They were the quality, and they represent all the quality and innovation. They have a great lineup, strong ties to OEM placements, strong ties in motorsports. They are definitely leading by example and just doing everything right. Excuse me. Now Goodyear comes in and they want to launch a new all-season tire. This is when stocks are at their lowest point. We really need to rally dealer confidence that we can help them make money, and that Goodyear is the way, that the choice to go. We had to tell a story, and as a challenger brand, we had to help them recognize the potential in this new Goodyear all-season tire. So we created a kiosk, and this was for the Goodyear annual trade show, where they would invite all their dealers. Everybody comes in, they have a badge on, just like any trade show you've been to. They'll go up to this kiosk right there and they'll scan their badge. It has their location information in it. And we will tell them, and that's where the story began. That's where the magic happened. We would tell them a story. It says, you're located in this area, this city. You have an average of 114 days of rain. You get 15 days of snow each year. There are X number of cars in your service area, and this many people will need tires for this application. This is the forecast for your all-season tire sales. You should order X number of tires. And it'll give them the option right there to say, would you like to place your order? Would you like to have a consultation to talk this further? They had the highest order of pre-sale on this Goodyear Assurance tire than any tire ever launched at a dealer show. That was being a solution. That was telling a story. That was forecasting their success with this product. It was able to be engaging and overcomes some of that doubt that people had because you gave them a reason to believe in your product.
Okay, great. Let's dive into another one here. The bottled water market. Dasani is the market leader. You could also say Aquafina is in that mix as well. But they, are using imagery of springs, of rivers, of mountains, pristine landscapes, to really identify purity and align with nature. So they really established this image in the market. So when you think bottled water, you typically will see this imagery. The real strength of Dasani really came from their distribution, their consistency, as well as their price. You can find Dasani almost anywhere, really. Gas stations, the stadiums. It's consistently positioned as a good quality at good value. So this combination of accessibility, affordability, and just being a trusted brand really made Dasani a default choice for millions of consumers, and really cemented its leadership in the category. So the question is, as you know, becomes how do you challenge an established market like this? So go ahead, Tony. Um, well, enter Liquid Death. Pause there for a second. Um, as many of you know, Liquid Death has some very interesting marketing tactics, but they're a prime example of a challenger brand and do a lot of challenger brand marketing. So Liquid Death really came into this market and they completely flipped the script. They did something that was just not, none of the other players in this market are doing. Instead of chasing the masses with those images of mountains and rivers, they really looked at targeting a passionate niche, and that was the heavy metal community or the rock community. One of the most famous stunts they did, you may have already heard of, was something called the Pit Diaper, a wild tongue-in-cheek solution for fans who did not want to miss a moment in the mosh pit or watching their favorite band. It solved a real pain point, believe it or not, but it was also designed with dark, ironic humor, and it felt perfectly authentic to their target audience. Essentially, the result was instant virality. It was shocking, funny, and it was endlessly shareable. That kind of content really made people not just want to buy the water, but really be a part of that movement. And Liquid Death has done an excellent job at maintaining this momentum over time. And what they really did was create a sense of belonging. They didn't just sell that water; they celebrated a subculture and really turned the customers into fans. They embraced bold creativity, leaning into identity, and made the commodity product feel essentially like a badge of membership or a badge of honor that you're part of that movement. The takeaway is clear: challengers don't always win by competing on price or sale. They win by creating culture, by standing for something their audience really wants to be a part of.
I'm gonna guess if you remember one thing today, it's probably gonna be this visual because you can't get that out of your head. So thanks,
Yep.
Wayne.
Anytime.
Mm.
So we'll move forward to another case study looking at Gillette. So most of us know Gillette has dominated the shaving market and the razor blade market for many, many years. They're really fueled by big budgets, glossy ads, and really mass media type of placements. They set the standard for consistent innovation and safety. They really did pioneer safety razors as well as multi-blade systems. Their products are known for exceptional quality and versatility, and really gave them broad appeal across many different customer segments. And with that century of history, Gillette really carried that brand equity as a market leader, really capitalized on everybody understanding who they are and what they do. So that combination of innovation, quality, and legacy really cemented them as the leader in that market. But it also opened them up to be challenged, which I think is really important. So let's go ahead and flip towards the next slide here. And that really was Dollar Shave Club. So that's exactly what they did. They challenged the market leader. So Tony, do you want to go ahead and play that?
Mhm.
Well, you can continue watching the rest of that spot there. It is a full 90 seconds, but quite an excellent example of being witty and humorous. So when we think about this and what Dollar Shave Club did, they didn't outspend Gillette. They essentially outsmarted them. That spot that you saw the first part of was $4,500 to produce. They shot it in one day. It was funny, direct. They didn't hire any actors, and it was really in complete opposite to what Gillette was doing with their marketing imagery in the market.
Mhm.
So this ad launched on a single channel, just YouTube. Within 48 hours of that ad being dropped on YouTube, the site crashed from demand. Over 12,000 people had already signed up as paying subscribers to get these razors. And then 3 months later, it racked up 3 million views, essentially without a media budget. They didn't put any extra advertising dollars behind it initially. What made this work really was authenticity, and I think you saw that at play in the video. The humor is bold, and it was relatable. It really mocked overpriced blades and flashy gimmick is, how many razor blades do you really need on one razor? Really, begs that question. But it also offered really clear and simple value. These are affordable razors and they're delivered straight to your door. Brand voice was conversational, anti-corporate, which really made it feel fresh, real, and authentic. So that scrappy video didn't just sell razors. Initially, it sparked a movement. 4 years later, Dollar Shave Club was acquired by Unilever for $1 billion. So definitely worked in their favor. So I think the takeaway here really is simple. Challengers don't have to match a leader's spending power. With sharp positioning, creativity, timing, they can really outsmart some of the biggest players in the industry. That being said, we're going to do another poll here. I think this will be our last poll. And just kind of taking a look at, now that you've understood how challenger strategy, some brands and challenger strategies that have been executed, how do you measure your brand success? What are the things that you're looking at to see if you are succeeding in the market?
While they're answering, I think one of the interesting things that you pointed out with Dollar Shave Club, and they have something so much in common with the Dasani and the Liquid Death and the Block Louder and Carhartt examples, that they were so much the anti-leader. They were the counterculture. Dollar Shave Club looks aged. It's, look at the colors they're using. They don't look like a rocket ship razor.
Yeah.
It's the total opposite coming into a market. That's how they went to market. That's really cool. Something different.
Yeah, definitely made waves. Cool. So the results are coming in, and we're seeing that we're not measuring consistently yet at 50%, which is really interesting. And then we're looking tied between the other ones in terms of sales and revenue, brand awareness, audience engagement, or even market share. So definitely interesting that we're not consistently measuring yet. So happy to tell you there are ways to measure if these particular strategies are working. And so Tony, just flip to that next slide there. Let's talk about some of those. So measuring success of a challenger brand really looks different from tracking a traditional campaign. The goal isn't awareness. It's really about impact in the right places. So first, let's look at niche awareness. Are you building recognition and shifting perception inside your target audience? A real key tool here is to do something called brand lift studies, in which that you take a look at what is your market share before and then after a marketing campaign. You can then compare if you are indeed capturing market share as a result because of how aware people are of your brand. Secondly, look at engagement community. I cannot understate this. It's really important as a challenger brand when you're talking directly to your target audience. Are people following, sharing, and advocating for you on your channels? The strengths of individual conversations and building that community are a key cornerstone of challenger brands. It's a real clear sign that you're gaining momentum in the marketplace. Third, look at customer growth and retention. Success, doesn't mean only just signing up new customers or selling products. It's about keeping them. Keep an eye on your churn rate. Are your customers churning? Are there repeat business? Those are really big indicators that you're building loyalty in a community that's going to grow very quickly. Fourth, share of voice. This is a measure that takes a look at essentially how visible are you in your particular market. Being able to see how often you're being cited in media, how often you show up in search, and even how many times your brand is being mentioned on social media are really good ways to measure your success. And I'd be amiss if I don't talk about, two of these last ones here. You want to understand your revenue and the market share that you're capturing. So very important to measure internally. Then also mention, your return on investment. A lot of scrappy challenger brands like Dollar Shave Club that we just talked about have crazy return on investments. But if you are able to really tap into your audience, you can realize some of those return on investments as well. So I think in the end, the challenger success really is about smart wins that add up over time, proving you don't really have to outspend to outperform your competition. So I'll pass it over to Chris.
So as we wrap up, I want to bring this full circle. We started today by asking, what does it really mean to be a challenger brand? And along the way, we've seen that it's not about being the biggest player in the market. It's about being the boldest. We looked at examples from Duck Brand, from Block Louder, from LP Smart Side, from Goodyear, Liquid Death, and Dollar Shave Club. Each of these proves the same point. Challengers don't win by playing the leader's game. They're not copycatting. They win by changing the rules, by creating emotional connections, and by leaning into what makes them truly different. Throughout today's webinar, we've covered from defining what a challenger brand is, to messaging, strategy, media, and measurement. And you've seen how it takes the same approach and how you can now apply this to your business. So here's our challenge to you. Don't aim to be the market leader. Aim to be the brand that customers can't stop talking about. The one that redefines what's possible in your category. And because in today's world, business isn't just business, business is personal. And when you approach it with a challenger mindset, you have the power to not just compete, but to truly stand out. Thank you for joining us today. We can't wait to see what challenger moves you all make next. I'm going to turn this over to Wayne to see if we've gotten any questions. And if you have any questions, now's a good time to put them up through the Q&A there.
Yeah, we had a few coming through different channels, but yeah, as Chris said, please enter any sort of questions you have in the Q&A. But we'll start by one. I think this is a really good one for you, Chris, especially when you talked about the Duck Brand and what they did there. So the question is, challenger brands are often disruptive, but how do you know when a bold move will resonate or it's going to backfire? How do you hedge against that?
You know, that's a great question. And I'm going to tell you, in some respects, there is a little risk taking here. There is a little leap of faith. When we were talking about the duct tape prom, that original idea happened because we were getting kids sending us their duct tape tuxedos and gowns and basically saying, do you want to buy it off of us or do you want to spotlight it? Mm-hmm. So we saw it already happening in that case. And we thought, you know, it's happening and we're not even trying. So what if we threw some structure? What if we created a scholarship? What if we, and actually the real reason for the duct tape prom contest was to promote color duct tape. You know, getting people to understand this is far more than just gray. You've got all these different colors. And that was something that Duck Brand really took the lead. But I guess we took a calculated risk because we saw others doing it. The big surprise for us, though, and I have to state this as a PR guy, what we didn't expect and didn't know, we put the scholarship out there, we promoted it, we got it out, a couple news releases, we got some media hits, and then we waited. And the first prom that happened where some students had created a gown and tuxedo out of colored duct tape got picked up by a TV station, and then that TV station, everything went national from there. And over the course of a weekend, we had 50 different placements all over the country, and that happened every single week. So I guess to come back to your question, you know, there is risk. You don't know if it's going to work, but I think in this day, in this market, having bold ideas and sharing them, and then when I say sharing them, not necessarily with your everybody that you work with, but sharing with your potential customers who you're going after, it really could make a difference. In the case of Duck Brand, it totally repositioned the entire brand and got people to think about the brand in a totally different way. Great question.
Great, thank you, Chris. Tony, I think this one's probably best suited for you. Can market leaders also use challenger strategies? Are these tactics only effective for smaller brands?
That's a good question.
Can you have it both ways?
Can you have it both ways? Yes, yes and no. But I think when a market leader looks at adopting more of this risky, I don't want to say risky, but like a challenger brand mentality, and if they start doing innovations, small changes make huge ripples for leader brand customers. If you change something that they're so used to, if you change a feature in a product, you're going to tick off a lot of people if you're the leader brand. It's expected that you're going to change and innovate and use feedback, but I think they'll start considering the brand as, you know, even to the point of extreme level, but selling out to appease a certain smaller group of customers, or they're just trying to get that market or people who want this feature. So, I mean, there's risk involved more so for a leader brand to make changes like that. Leader brands can often subdivide out into different marketing approaches to hit different smaller subsets of customers, but that's their way of trying to get the loyal followings from smaller groups.
Can definitely feel disingenuous if a leader sometimes takes the challenger approach.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And then just the last one, I probably best for me to answer this one, but how do you identify the best niche channels for a challenger brand? We did talk about that. And avoid wasting time on ones that won't scale. I think that's a really important thing. And the way I'm going to answer that is you need to do your research. You need to understand your target audience and your customer segments. Build out buyer personas. Understand what are their pain points. Once you've done thorough enough research, you're going to be able to start to pinpoint where they work and play. So you can use tools that we use internally that help capture some of that information. So there's tools like Media Radar. We use SEMrush on the SEO side. There's SpyFu. There's even BrandWatch that takes a look at brand mentions as well as just sentiment as well on those channels. But it really comes back to just understanding your audience inside and out and really what makes them tick. And that way, when you create a bold strategy, you can back that up by informative data that understands that this is a calculated risk, not just a out there, we're going to try something crazy. So that's how I would answer that.
Any more questions, Mike?
I don't see anything coming up in the Q&A session, so I think I'm just going to go ahead and give that back to you, Chris.
Perfect. Hey, we appreciate your time today. Thank you for joining us. As you can see, challenger brands are very near and dear to our heart. If you'd like to talk more about your challenger brand and perhaps how to market it and how best to move forward, it's something that we obviously do very well here at True, and we'd love to have that conversation for you. Also, you will be receiving an email here probably tomorrow that will have a copy of the webinar today. You can watch that at your leisure. But if you have additional questions, you have additional thoughts, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to hear from you. So with that, thank you so much. Have a great Wednesday, and we'll talk more soon.